India and the modern world. Introduction. The history of India, as that of other countries, is divided into ancient, medieval, and modern periods. This division is because the society, culture, polity, and economy of each period differs from the other very much. Modern period in Indian history begins with 18th century because many characteristics of modern period had begun in this century. These features of modern times appeared much earlier in Europe. From 15th century onwards, European traders and sailors were collecting a number of articles like spices, cloth, tea, sugar, saltpetre, etc. from India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, China, etc. As they made huge profits out of this trade, traders often fought among themselves to establish monopoly over the trade with India and other countries. Sometimes they sought military help also from their motherlands. In the beginning of 18th century, the administration of our country was very weak and anarchy prevailed over many parts of the country, making life, religion, and prosperity of the people insecure. These circumstances in India helped the English to establish not only their trade base but also their political authority in India. Trade and colonization. Trading companies from different European countries like Portugal, Denmark, Holland, France, and England were formed to trade with India and other parts of Asia. These companies came to India and established their trade centers, which were called factories, if the places where factors or officials of their companies worked. These companies purchased spices, cotton and silk cloth, muslin, indigo, etc. from our country. This gave impetus to trade and to have full control over it. They established colonies in India and other Asian and African countries. At this period, the Asian countries including India had neither strong army nor worthwhile navy, so it was very easy for the Europeans to conquer us and to establish their political authority. Thus, from the latter half of 19th century, colonization started not only in India but also in other Asian, African, American countries by the Europeans. Beginning of the modern age in Europe. In the medieval age, crusades were fought. Crusades were wars of religion fought between Christians and Muslims for the profession of holy lands like Palestine, Jerusalem, and Bethlehem, which were connected with the life of Jesus Christ. The Greek scholars fled to other European nations along with their ancient Greek literature. These scholars established schools and monasteries and taught Greek literature all over Europe and inculcated interest among the people in the revival of ancient literature and culture. This was known as Renaissance. In Italy, Renaissance in literature was started even earlier. The scholars of 15th century started writing in European languages in which the people could read and write. Several scholars translated Bible into European languages. Manufacture of paper and invention of printing press made the study of literature and scientific works popular. As you know, Vasco da Gama discovered a sea route to India and Columbus discovered America. Discovery of sea route to India and new lands brought in tremendous increase in trade between Western and Eastern countries. Renaissance further inspired the people to learn by probing and questioning, which was called scientific method. All these changes made the beginning of modern age in Europe and put an end to feudalism. A new system of society began to take place, which was called capitalism. Rise of capitalism. Capitalism can be defined as an economic system wherein the means of production and distribution are owned by private persons and are operated for profits. Capitalism in Europe gave rise to two new classes in the society. They were capitalists and workers. Capitalists were owners of industries and machines. They invested money for the purchase of raw materials and paid the wages for workers who worked in their factories. Workers produced goods and received wages for their work. Industrial Revolution, which started in 18th century in Europe, encouraged the capitalists to invest more and more money in industries to earn huge profits. Industrial Revolution. Revolution is a sudden change in any field. Invention of machines which were used in industries and through which production of goods increased was called Industrial Revolution. A machine was a substitute for the work done by many persons, and production in each industry was multiplied with the help of machines. The use of machines first began in England. England became the workshop of the world. This revolution spread to other countries very soon, and it has not ended even today. Rise of Imperialism. You know that the British established their political authority in India in the first half of 19th century. Their authority was confined to Bombay, Madras and Bengal. Slowly their sway extended to major area in India, and this was treated as a part of British Empire. Their empire extended into Burma also. Most of the parts of Africa also came under direct or indirect control of European imperialism. Outline history of world, major developments and their impact on India. The American and French revolutions. In the later half of 18th century, the world witnessed two major revolutions. English government had 13 colonies in North America. The people of these colonies had come from England and settled in America. Heavy taxes were levied on them, and many kinds of restrictions on their exports and imports were imposed. The people of these colonies considered themselves as Americans and demonstrated their protest against the British rule. As the English government did not accept these rights, Americans started the War of Independence, which resulted in the independence of the colonies. America became a republic in 1783. Liberty, equality and fraternity were the guiding principles of the French Revolution, declared that all men are born and remain free and are equal in rights. These two revolutions further had their impact on other countries of the world and those who were not enjoying democracy. In the 19th century, Germany and Italy fought for their national unification and got it. The Indians who received English education were aware of all these developments. The advent of Europeans to India. When Vasco da Gama reached Calicut, Jamorin, the ruler of that area, invited him and permitted the Portuguese to trade in his kingdom. Pope, the religious head of the Christendom, also issued a papal bull to this extent recognition the trade rights of the Portuguese in the East. In 1509, Albuquerque, the Portuguese governor, laid a policy of entering into alliances with the local rulers occupying the important parts of India and establishing matrimonial alliances with the Indians. Accordingly, he entered into a treaty with the ruler of Vijayanagara and occupied Goa from Bijapur Sultan. The successor governors of Albuquerque occupied Diu, Daman and Salsette on the coast of Arabian Sea in 1517 and 1518. The English East India Company could occupy all the Portuguese centres except Goa, Diu and Daman. But very soon they were ousted by the English from their trading centres. By the early 18th century, only England and France dominated the Indian trade. They were involved with each other in conflicts and wars as each of them tried to purchase more goods from India for cheapest possible rates and thereby earn huge profits. The French had their headquarters at Pondicherry in the Carnatic on the southeast coast of India. The English East India Company had its trade centre at Fort St. George in Madras. Arcot was the capital town of Carnatic. This was the area where the conflict between English and French began. Carnatic Wars. First Carnatic War. During 1740 to 48, the War of Austrian Successor took place in Europe between Austria and Prussia. England helped Austria and France helped Prussia. In India, Duplessis was the governor of French company at Pondicherry. When news of war of Austrian succession reached Duplessis, he waged a war against English East India Company in India and besieged Fort St. George at Madras. The Nawab of Carnatic sent an army against the French army, but his armies were defeated by the French. In 1748, peace was concluded in Europe between Austria and Prussia, and in India also, French restored Madras to the English. This was called the First Carnatic War. Second Carnatic War. This war was fought between the French and English without obtaining necessary permission from their motherlands in Europe. In 1748, Nizam-ul-Mulk, the ruler of Hyderabad, died. A war of succession broke out between his son Nazir Jung and grandson Muzaffar Jung. At the same time, Chanda Sahib was competing for Nawabship of Carnatic with Anwaruddin. Chanda Sahib and Muzaffar Jung cooperated with each other and requested for French help. The English were alarmed at the victories of the French, so they started supporting Muhammad Ali and Nazir Jung. In Carnatic also, English interfered and invaded Carnatic under Robert Clive. Chanda Sahib was killed and Muhammad Ali was installed as a Nawab of Arcot in 1751. As a result of this war, English East India Company could replace the influence of French in Carnatic. Third Carnatic War. The final phase of disputes between English and French started in 1756. When 7 years' war broke out in Europe, Count de Lally was sent by the French government to look after the war activities in India. He ordered Count de Bussy, another French general who was stationed at Hyderabad, to join him in the besiege of Madras. In spite of their defeat in Second Carnatic War, the French retained their influence in Hyderabad. The Nizam allowed the French to collect revenue from his territories to maintain their armies, which were accepted to extend protection to Nizam. The French forces were defeated in Third Carnatic War. The French lost their influence in Hyderabad and the Nizam gave the English northern Sarkars. The northern Sarkars were Krishna, Guntur, Vishakhapatnam, Godavari and Ganjam districts. In 1763, when the 7 Years' War was ended, the French possessions were restored to them by the English, but it was too late for them as they ceased to be a political power in India.